How are you? Hello, hello. I am going live with my friend Colin, who is awesome, good vibes. He's a doctor, and I'm just really excited to get to have a conversation with him right now. I just see he got in the house. Hello, Colin. Let's see here. Oh, I'm not going to be driving. I'm just sitting in my car. Thank you, though, alive and kicking. Hello.
Hello!
Hi, how are
How's
you?
it going? Fixing up my earphones right now.
I probably should put it in my earphones too. I just want to say a quick disclaimer. I'm not driving, but I did get caught doing errands, so I'm sitting in my car while we do our live.
No, that's cool. Trying to prop up this.
You do it. You take your time. We got friends on here. Hey, Vic. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just
I
really
am super
excited.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah,
Excited to catch up.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I know we talked on the phone like a couple months ago when the pandemic was starting to happen, or when we were just starting,
Mhm.
and then when was I? I was on your podcast, like a year or maybe 2 years ago now. I don't even remember.
Year ago, yeah. My podcast started in May. I think you were like the 12th episode. So I'd probably say like in the summer of last year.
Okay, all right, cool. Yay. Well, it's so nice to be able to introduce you to my community. Would you like to give a little introduction of who you are, what you do, and we'll just go from there?
Yeah, definitely. So, hi guys, I'm Colin Zhu, and I'm also known as the Chef Doc on my IG, and I'm a board certified family practice physician. Also boarded in lifestyle medicine, and I'm a chef and a coach as well. Um,
All the things.
Yeah, all the different things that, a human can possibly, express themselves with. And it's been fun. It's been a journey. I hope everyone is well and safe out there. I know that, we wanted this to kind of end a lot sooner. But yeah, we're just here to have a conversation. And I think you and I met virtually, right? I don't think we ever met like well, I mean, our initial encounter was not in person, but we've met in person before.
Yes, exactly. I believe it was after the podcast we got together, which I think is so cool. I think social media, if you use it in the right way, it's such a powerful tool, not only for your business, but for being able to connect with other amazing humans that you may have never met before just crossing the street.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I mean, my podcast, when I started it, it was initially to my own networks, and then I started branching out, and people started finding me. So it's a great vehicle. It is a double-edged sword because we are talking about mental health, and it's one of those things where you can't, if you don't keep yourselves in check, social media can use you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be, all the more wiser.
Absolutely. And actually, I was just thinking about that. There's so much bullying going on or that can take place on social media too, and that's really something that we have to be aware of. And I mean, even just recently, I have a friend that's been kind of going through that. And I mean, luckily she's so good at combating what people say, but like
Hmm.
I think sometimes we forget to be kind and nice, and I know that some of us come from backgrounds of trauma, and so sometimes it feels normal to be that way. Sometimes it feels normal to be in constant struggle or constant trauma or constant arguments. At least that's what I thought growing up, because I come from childhood trauma, and I see. I mean, for lack of a better word, you hear the word trolls. You hear people who like literally make separate accounts just so that they can go on other people's pages and be mean and say rude things, and yeah, you kind of have to have a tough skin for that as well.
You do, you do. We do live in a digital era. I don't know when you were born, but I remember my childhood. I talk about this a lot on other people's shows, and I was fortunate enough to live a very happy and simple childhood growing up before the internet age. So remember just being distracted by like dirt and rocks and ants. And I definitely applauded my, I was born to immigrant parents, and so, we didn't have much growing up, and, so I really found the value of things just simpler things in life, and I really appreciated that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did they immigrate from?
My parents came from southern China. My dad's from Guangzhou province in southern China. My mom's from Hong Kong. So and they came in the early '80s. They had me later on around in the '90s where my sister was born. And so yeah, now we're just all over the country. Thankfully healthy and safe. But yeah, we're good. We're good. Thankfully so. So. What about your
Awesome.
family?
My mom's an immigrant as well. She's from Germany, and and I don't talk about it a lot. Like, not a lot of my friends even know that I can speak German. But she
Nice.
came over here. She was on vacation. She fell in love with my dad. She was gonna have to go home. Her visa was expiring, and they both were like, "We're in love. Why don't we get married and have kids and live this life?" And she was like, "It's my dream to be in America, of course." So they got married and had two kids, and of course down the
Aw.
line things didn't work out, but yeah, so I feel fortunate because I feel like I got to grow up in America with both upbringings. I got a European upbringing, which was maybe a little bit more open-minded and
Yeah.
just like different things, and there was lots of cultural things, cultural differences that sometimes I was okay about. Sometimes I got made fun of for it. But as an adult, I'm so thankful to have that culture because I
Yeah.
realize, I mean, America's wonderful, but as far as culture goes, I don't think we have as much as, like other countries.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of times, so I was born in the States. I was born in New Jersey. I'm not originally, you and I are, well, you're not in LA right now, right?
No, Northern California.
Okay, yeah. So you moved up. We were just like we were two neighbors before, and so I've only been in California a little bit, maybe close to like 2.5 years now. But I'm originally from the East Coast, and having been born in the States and having my life the way it's turned out to be, I've been very humbled and blessed to kind of like travel the world, travel the States, and so it is interesting from my point of view to kind of have so many people from all walks of life, and yet feel very, very, separate and segregated. And obviously, this year has taught us that we're just fighting unnecessarily. I don't know why we're fighting. I don't know why we're battling. The election's coming up, a couple of weeks. But it's kind of like, if we can find the common ground, the common thread, it's very there, within our humanity. We will know that, we may look different on the outside, but at the end of the day, we actually all want the same things. We all value the same things. So
What a great point. And I think that segues into mental health. If we can come from a place of being more compassionate, being more understanding about one another, trying to put ourselves into someone else's footsteps, into their life, it really, when you can create that understanding, I think there's this new level of mental health that you can have. One, you're not making someone have poor mental health by being mean or having misunderstandings, but also yourself personally, you can understand those things. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn, like
yeah,
being made fun of as a child for being different and having a German mom. Like, it was I was being made fun of because she was from another country, and I didn't
hmm,
understand it. And as I got older, I thought, okay, kids, they just don't understand. We only
right,
have so many tools, at that age and in grammar at school. And so
yeah.
it's yeah, it's really trying to come from understanding and compassionate, to agree to disagree if you have to, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind me asking, was it because of like your name, you actually, said some words, or like how did they, like what was, like how did they come to find out, of something to make fun of? Like what happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wore slightly different clothes. I remember in fourth grade, I showed up. I had just come back from Europe, and I found these amazing platforms, like so cool. No one was wearing platforms back then, and I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna like these are so cool." And I went to school in them, and
Uh-huh.
I remember going home and never wearing them again because like these they made me so happy, and I had gotten so much fun made of me. And
Hmm.
I mean, that was just one thing, and there was other things. Like I remember in first grade, my there's a tradition when you first go to first grade, there's this big cone. I mean, it was like almost as big as my body in first grade, and it's supposed to be a really great thing. Like it's a big present. Like my mom got me a watch for school so I could tell the time. She got me a pencil. She got me a couple other knickknacks and erasers. And I remember I was the only person in school that had it. She made me take photos in front of class, and I was like
Yeah.
dying inside. And kids were like kind of looking. Some kids thought it was cool, but some kids were like, like, what's that? And it was
Right.
just, it was different. That's all it was. It was different. It was real, it
Yeah.
was cool. And now I'm like, you know what? Thanks, Mom. Thank you for letting me enjoy that as hard as it was, kind of.
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, like one, it's a great example of, we could say things differently, we could wear things differently, but at the same time, it also exposes yourself like what else is out there, right? So you either have a couple of choices. It's either like that'll prompt you to want to learn more, or people, kids when we were that young, it would just kind of prompt them to bully, because they don't understand. And I think that a lot of what we face now is because it's different in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't actually reach across to learn and to be aware and be a little bit open-minded, you will actually see that there's actually underlying a lot of similarities. And
Yes.
I found this out like, while traveling and things like that. And I was made fun of, to share a story when I was younger, it was, I was made fun of, not because of what I said, but kind of like how I looked, when I actually had hair, I would have like the typical like Asian bowl cut, and, and I would just, I remember getting bullied, by one particular kid, and I would get into schoolyard fights, and it surprises people sometimes, but that's what it is. Sometimes kids are mean, and in this digital era, it's like people are mean, virtually, which, in my opinion, I don't know what would be worse. I don't know if someone facing you face to face is worse, or the fact that that other people can, I don't know, read people's
Mm.
comments. I don't know what was worse, but I remember the face to face was bad because when you're in schoolyard fights, you have other kids, chanting and egging you on, and no one's wanting to stop it. They just want to watch it, right? And so I don't know what would be worse, but it is sad when you hear people, commit suicide from it, and even kids, in their early teens, like 10 to 14, committing suicide, and it's very heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking. So
Yeah, it is. And and again, it's because we're given this toolbox. I always use this metaphor. Like we have this toolbox as we come into the world and as we grow. And there's certain tools we have, and there's certain tools we acquire. And some of us don't have certain ones. And so, for example, like I did grow up learning that it's okay to be different, and to accept people for being different. And I even think I have to say, I don't look different, and I don't know what that's like. You know what I mean? Like hearing you say
mhm.
that you got made fun of because you looked differently, and I mean, sure, I did, because I was wearing the different shoes and I would wear different
Yeah,
clothes, but I didn't look. I mean, I'm a white blonde girl, so I didn't get that aspect of it.
yeah,
And and that's huge. And I know that there's so many people that are dealing with that. And yeah, and I don't know what would be worse either, getting bullied online or in person.
Right.
Like I mean, this is my adult response. In my mind, I think it's cowardly to do it online because it's like, okay, so you can't show your face, like you can't do this in person.
Right.
But I mean, and being in person, like you feel someone else's energy. There's that
Yeah.
intensity
Oh
there. I,
yeah.
I almost want to say that might be a little, I mean, I'm not like comparing the two. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I hear
yeah.
you.
Well, I think the closest as an adult would be like, before COVID, if you had like a barroom scene, right? You're going out at night and something happens, right? A fight breaks out, or before all these regulations at work, people would have like office drama and stuff like that. I think those probably are the two closest examples I can think of, like in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. The toolbox, I think it's so important, the toolbox. And, some of us didn't have the luxury, or the opportunity to, grow up with their biological parents. They probably had foster parents or they had adopted parents. And so they may or may not have come with the certain tools. And if you did have guardians or parents, maybe they were not as emotionally evolved, right? So you kind of have to go through life not having them, as role models. And so you have to figure it out for yourself. So I think one of the keys with mental health, and it is something that we do talk about, currently, is trying to find, a mentor, trying to find someone
Mm,
you can go to, a teacher, a professor, a good friend. If you're lucky to have an older sibling, a close friend, a significant other, someone, just like reach out to someone. And during COVID, it's more important and more essential to do so, because we can't, not as readily, go out anymore. But I would say that's the first step. I don't know if you want to, talk about a second one.
yeah, well, I'd even love to just validate what you just said. I don't know if that was something that you did on your journey, but that was the first step into me creating a better, healthier lifestyle for myself and beginning my mental health journey. And that was I was 19. And so that was, gosh, 14 years ago, I think. Um, I I met a wife and her husband, and they became my mentors. And it was kind of by accident, but we just ended up talking at this event, and they made me feel so heard.
Mm,
Like I was able to talk to them. I didn't really have parents that I could talk to about certain things. Well, I had my mom was around, my dad was kind of in and out. So it was really only my mom I could speak to. And and there were just things that I sometimes couldn't speak to. And sometimes I never wanted her to feel bad for the stuff that took place. I know she always loved us, and so I
hmm
didn't want to go there. And so I needed someone else to talk to, someone with a different perspective that wasn't from my family. And it made such a huge difference because they
hmm
had a different perspective. They had a healthier perspective.
hmm
um, and it's just nice to know that other people are out there, and then they would share their stories with me. And I think the reason they were so loving towards me is because they had a very similar background to me. And so I think that another step on top of just having a mentor is finding support, not just mentor support, but like finding a circle, finding a community
Yeah.
of like-minded individuals. And that honestly, that propelled me, because I, for the longest time, and again, I was around 19 when I got accepted into this program, and it was all these other girls, and they had
hmm
all come from some sort of trauma or abuse, whether it was physical, emotional, alcohol or drug abuse. And it was the first time in my life that I realized I wasn't the only person on earth that was depressed and that
Yeah.
had panic attacks and had severe anxiety. Like, I didn't even know I was living with anxiety. I was living with anxiety my entire life. Like,
hmm
whoa. So
Yeah.
that was, finding other people, other like-minded people, I think is the next step. I mean, maybe it goes hand in hand with having a mentor, but because then you feel normal. I mean, normal, what's normal, but it's fine. It's not feeling alone.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll echo that by saying that, it's kind of like, I think a good example to relate to would be like growing up in school, you would have these like extracurricular classes or after school programs. And that's where you find your like-minded friends. And because you have like-minded interests and hobbies,
Yeah.
like growing up, I played music. I was a piano player. I was in concert band. I wasn't good at any of it, but like at least you had those, right? And then I was involved in track. I played recreational basketball. So, things like that. And as an adult, if we're using the digital era, for example, like this is where Facebook, like private groups works well, or even organizations like meetup.com, work very well. Um, Very early in my career, I speak a lot. For those of you who don't know, I public speak. And before I went on my journey, I enrolled myself in something called Toastmasters, which is a international speaking organization.
How cool.
And so those are everyone from every walk of life, comes up and, they just learn the art of public speaking just to kind of better whatever situation they're in, whether it's a normal conversation like this, or a conference, or a presentation, or something you have to give. But yeah, whatever it is, I would say find people that jive with you, your tribe, and this is how we connect as humans, is because that underlying thread is, we're actually more similar than dissimilar, and I
We
think we
so
just
are.
we just overemphasize the dissimilarities, and that's just really, really unfortunate, There is beauty in being different, but there's also beauty in being, very similar as well. So,
Yeah, I agree with you on that, really, honestly. And like I said, that changed everything for me when I realized I wasn't alone and I realized that there were other meetup groups you could go to. I mean, there's vegan meetup groups, there's cooking meetup groups, there's health, there's hiking, there's anxiety meetup groups. Like,
yeah,
there's so many different things that you just have to search. So you can't just sit back and wish that the world's going to happen for you. You do have to do some work, and you have to, search on Google. You need to reach out a little bit, which I know can be hard, and sometimes it can be a little bit
yeah,
scary, because like I get social anxiety like more often than you would think. I mean, I
hmm,
get on stages and I teach cooking classes and I speak too, and I still get this anxiety. Or like before I go to like, a vegan meetup or something, or some sort of event, I get this social anxiety. It's a real thing. I mean, I've come now to find these really wonderful practices that I can ground myself with,
right,
but still me, even as an expert in plant-based nutrition and someone who's a coach, I still go through these things, and I think that's also, that's we're more similar than we think.
yeah,
We tend to put people on this pedestal. We're all the same. And,
yeah,
and again, we're all unique, but we're all very similar. I
yeah.
love that you're saying
No,
that.
definitely, and it's critical. So, bringing it back to the pandemic. So I battle with anxiety for most of my life. I have self-diagnosed OCD, which I'm wanting to take care of, and I've dealt with bouts of depression when I was early on in my training as a doctor.
Mm,
And I highlight some of that stuff in the book that I wrote. And it's very it's very, sometimes it can be very nerve-wracking, sometimes it can be very frustrating, and that it's there. It's kind of lurking in the corner, right? And ever so often it'll pop up, its angry head every now and then. But this is how we know that, you're human. I think one of the early things that I've learned on my personal self-work journey was that, we tend to want to gravitate towards things that are really positive,
mm.
we are, this or that. I'm very, we love things saying like, I'm beautiful, or I'm handsome, or I'm successful, and all these different things. But we also tend to, what the society also does is that we tend to shy away and put away negative things about ourselves, right? Like either I'm shy, or I procrastinate, or I can't, and we overemphasize that and we put those away. One of the things I love, and one of the great speakers and authors that I fell in love with was Debbie Ford.
Oh,
She's
never heard of
no
her.
she's no longer living, but she's done great work with like Deepak Chopra and a whole bunch of other people in the past. And she created this program called the Shadow Effect. And one of the best things that I learned from her was accepting the totality of all the different emotions as a human being. So what that means is accepting the light and the dark sides of us as a person. And so the more you can embrace all those different things, the more you realize that every human being goes through the exact same thing. And, not everything is like a roller coaster. There's always ebbs and flows. And we also have to, just encompass this. It's like seasons. Seasons come and go. Not so much in California, but, on the East Coast, there's definitely seasons. There's definitely all four
Yeah.
seasons. And you realize that there's always going to be winter and fall and spring and summer, and it just continues, right? And so as a human being, it's like we're going to go through these ebbs and flows. They're always going to come, and nothing stays, permanent. Nothing stays forever. So, but yeah, embracing everything.
Yeah, for sure. And and the dark that takes place or has taken place is what helps us appreciate and really see and soak in the light. Like for the longest time, I was so angry about watching my brother get beat up. I was so angry about going through this isolated depression and having anxiety. I was so, watch just so many things I was angry about. And
Yeah.
then as I started my conscious journey of really trying to go inward and doing some of the shadow work and getting a mentor and getting into these communities, I realized that these things, they were strengthening me for my purpose in life, and they were
Hmm.
they were helping me enjoy when I did get to the good stuff, and it really helps me connect to other people. And again, I know people look at me and they're like, "Oh, they're, this white blonde girl probably came from like a perfect home with a white picket fence." And honestly, like that's not it at all. It's like you couldn't be more wrong. And but what's beautiful about what happened to me and what I've
Hmm.
experienced is I can connect to people that have gone through depression, that have family members with schizophrenia, that have lost people to death. Like there's so many things that I feel like, wow, I almost feel fortunate, like, in a weird way that
Yeah.
I've been able to experience these events because now I connect and understand other people so much better. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I heard that, and thank you for sharing because I do know your journey with, your brother and,
Yeah, thank you.
his loss and, your loss and all that stuff. And I remember, I don't know where this came from, but I heard a great quote that says, whatever higher, power you subscribe to, maybe you don't believe in a higher power, but, for me, I believe in a higher power. And, one of the things that I learned is that the experiences, the obstacles, and the battles and challenges that you are given is meant to test you in some way, right? And so it's really, once you recognize it in that fashion, whether it's like a person confronting you or a specific life event that happens or transpires, it's there to kind of test you, to test your resilience. Like, for example, COVID is a very good example on a global scale in terms of how we're being tested and how well we are being resilient or not, and
Mm.
how we can pivot or not, and people are trying to do this in business and things like that. It's like how are we going to pick ourselves up as human beings, um, not even talking about whether there's leadership or not. Like that's an entirely different subject. And that sometimes, most times, I would say 99% of the time, we have to look within ourselves to call on ourselves to say, hey, we need to do the leading, instead of relying and depending on others.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to take the steps forward. And I know this is kind of like a side note, but even with like manifesting things in your life, a lot of people are like, "Oh, there's this thing called manifesting and you can manifest. I guess I want this to happen in my life and I'm just going to sit back." And it's like, "No, no, no. You can manifest things, but you actually have to take the steps forward towards it." And same thing in like self-healing. You can't just sit around hoping that somehow you're going to heal or someone's going to reach out to you. You
Yeah.
really do have to take life by the reins and say, okay, this is not going to define me. Like, you know,
Yeah.
this can be my story, but I want to move forward. And I think you said such a great word, resiliency. Finding out how to be resilient in tough times. I mean, especially right now. And I mean, and you're seeing, like, we're seeing both ends, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm seeing so many people start up new businesses, taking their businesses online. I was even one of them. I had to pretty much go fully online. I was about 50% online, but all of a sudden I had to take everything online. And then of course you have the other people that are like, okay, I'm just going to chill and hang out, or I'm going to, get into a deep depression, which I'm not making fun of at all, but you know what I mean? Like being in a deep
Right.
depression and not understanding how to get themselves out of it either. And so, yeah, you have to figure out how to be resilient. And I think
Yeah.
it's being a good problem solver, or at least trying to start to figure out how to solve problems, especially for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it is, I don't want to say life is short, as a cliche, it's not just a cliche, it is true, but I think the
Yeah,
pandemic has also taught us that it's very fragile. And so, and that nothing is really guaranteed or certain in life. And so, what happens, when that actually comes, how will you deal with it? And so I think the biggest thing, during this time, is really calling upon your support groups, like you said, like, having that mentor, or if you're lucky enough to have a dependable and reliable family member or friend, but just having good support groups. And then honestly, it doesn't matter where you're at life, just start from there, start
mm-hmm.
journaling to process, your anger, your hate, your anxiety, your depression. Or if it's with your business, let's, start getting the framework in, getting the, starting anew, so there's just so many different things. So
Absolutely. So I have a question for you. I would just love to know, as your experience in the pandemic, in the last, I don't even know how long has it been now, 7 months. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't even know what day it is anymore.
yeah.
Um, have you have you had to overcome? I mean, I'm sure you have. I mean, everyone has, but do you have anything that you'd like to share that you've had to overcome, or even maybe something that was inspirational or that could be of some value that maybe like took place for a family member or friend? Like, you don't have to call anyone out, but just, some sort of experience, just to give an example of like overcoming something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. A couple examples come to mind. I mean, one of the example didn't occur this year, but occurred last year, and it happened to. So I had something happen to a very close family member, and it was during like a family vacation, and that person pretty much like nearly drowned, and so that was a very difficult life event that happened, because something could have happened and that person might not be here. And I went through a period of feeling very guilty of not having done enough, right?
Mm,
And not being there, and things like that. I'm sure you can relate to this.
for sure.
And it was challenging. It was challenging. A lot of tears were shed, personally, feeling like there's more I could have done more. And I think for others during the pandemic, it could be a job loss, or someone in the hospital because of the virus, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, how I got over that was, um, just knowing that did my best. I did my best in the moment. Reflect on what I could have done better, and not really go into the game or the vicious cycle of blaming yourself, putting yourself down, beating yourself up, because that doesn't really help anyone, right?
Nope.
It doesn't really help anyone at all. And so, I even with this pandemic, I do my best to look for the silver lining. You know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely.
I'm going through like a transition, with my professional life, and it's not something I, anticipated or wanted, but that's where I'm at, So it's kind of like, where can you go from here? Not looking backwards, right? Because we can't change anything backwards. Where can we go from here? You know what I'm saying? So,
Mm. Yeah, I love the quote. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly word for word, but the only reason you should ever look back is to see how far you've come. You otherwise do not look back. It doesn't matter. It's already, I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but it's already happened. We have to keep moving forward. And I have had people tell me that they don't believe in that, but I also am not sure that they were quite on the road of, healing yet. And
yeah.
so when you haven't started your healing journey yet, that can sound kind of cliche or like going towards the light. I've had people literally tell me that's bullshit. And it's not, but if someone would have told me that before I started my healing journey, I might have thought so too.
Hmm.
So I do think I think it's important to, yeah, like always see the silver lining if you like however you can, because that is going to propel you forward. And I'll just give a quick example, again about like I haven't quite figured out I don't know if you figure out the silver lining in a death, but like from with what happened with my brother last year, 14 months ago. I mean, I've been trying to search for what I mean, obviously it is heart-wrenching, and I have gone through a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety in the last 14 months, but knowing that there's some sort of silver lining with it, there's something that's going to come out of it. I'm going to be able to carry on his legacy. He had mental health issues, and I already talked about them because of because of me, my journey. And he just kind of like upped me another couple levels, and it honestly has become one of the biggest things I talk about now. Before I would like sprinkle it in, and now I'm talking about it all the time. And what better time to talk about it, because I think I was looking back in March when everything started shutting down. I think that I don't quote me on the exact percentage, but I want to say just in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I think the Google searches for depression and anxiety had gone up like 28%, and then again like
Hmm.
another 56%. Like
Hmm.
people are like, whoa, like what do you do, like
Hmm.
where do we go from here? And so yeah, it's like looking for the good, or at least knowing the good is going to come at some point. And so like that's why I
Right.
said like I'm still kind of waiting
Yeah.
for like that big moment of like aha. And sometimes that
Hmm.
happen, I've had those moments before where 3 years later I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
now I know why that one terrible thing happened.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
it now. It doesn't
Yeah.
always show up right away.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, in the beginning of the pandemic, I faced a lot of anxiety too. And, again, it goes back to my point of, nothing in life is ever certain. And just because your life is going to, according to your plan, it's not going to end up exactly like that. And, I do know of people, I've had patients in the past who've never actually experienced trauma. And for me, my comment to that is, everyone experiences trauma, because it's like coming into, even going through the birth canal is traumatic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You may not remember it, but there's trauma, and whether you're into wanting to heal yourself is a different story. So it's okay if you're not at the moment, for those that are listening, but I would definitely invite you guys to actually explore, because you'll learn a lot about yourself. It's kind of like an onion. You'll peel off different layers, and you'll learn a lot about yourself. And, and then you'll strip away to essentially what it means to be human at the end of the day. And it's very gratifying, very fulfilling. You may shed a lot of tears, you may not. You may go through different bouts of, quote unquote, negative emotions, but at the end of the day, it is worth it. It's very, very worth it. And, it's, it's very important to go onto that. And no matter where you are, that's why it's called self-work. It's not supposed to be a competition, because your individual self-work is only yours and unique to yours. And just because someone understands something, has a light bulb, or has an epiphany, that doesn't mean it's going to be the same or different. Everyone's journey is different. So,
Yeah, you really can only compete with yourself. and again, you can only compete with the person you were yesterday, and
Yeah.
understand, like that kind of competition. And I know you had mentioned having mentors, that's something that helps. And I know that that helped me. Besides a mentor, how do you feel about seeing a therapist? I'd like to know, like as far as, and I'll just well, yeah, I'll let you answer that first, and I'll also talk about mine. Like, do you think it's healthy to have someone that you can work through things, peeling back these onions, or the portions of the onion, to get to that deeper level of sometimes
Yeah.
things that you didn't realize were traumatic, or that even affected you until you somehow bump into it by accident.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I've never used a therapist. Ironically, I'm actually searching for one
Okay.
currently, and I've actually used life coaches for about a decade. So I've always had
Okay.
life coaching. Coaching and therapy are very two different things, And I decided to become a health coach. What year is it now? Maybe like 9, almost 10 years ago now.
Good for you.
Because how we were taught to communicate with a patient is very different than how a coach, talks to their client. Even the verbiage is very different. And so I've always considered myself someone that is an advocate for someone else, kind of like a cheerleader, someone that's like supporting for someone else. And I've always believed in that, in the power of that kind of relationship. And so for
Mm-hmm.
those of you guys out there that's battling with something and don't really know which step to go, I would say if you need to go find a therapist, that's, there's nothing wrong with that. You can always try, have a phone call, search within your insurance if you, still have one, if you didn't lose your job, and, call, talk to them, and there's no loss to it. You know what I'm saying? And, people are very highly trained now, highly certified, great people out there just, wanting to work. And, you can do a lot of this virtually. You can even do something like this, via like Skype or FaceTime or Zoom or something. We have so many great technologies at our disposal to be able to facilitate it, But yeah, if you were on the fence about it, I would say go for it. You got nothing to lose. Would you rather just, stay back and not do anything about it, or do you want to have possible solutions and possible choices and options at your disposal, which you probably wouldn't know until you actually meet up with a therapist, So a ton of tools.
Yeah, you never know until you try something. And I'll just kind of go on top of that, because I see a therapist once a week, and I've been through therapy on and off for the last 13 years, depending on different things that took place. And then sometimes it was just, time for it to end and I was moving or something. And then something else took place where I realized, oh my gosh, I need a therapist again. And I mean,
Yeah.
it shouldn't have to be that like every time like a traumatic experience happens, that's when you go running. But I mean, that's often, I think, even as as a doctor, usually people aren't coming to I mean, sometimes they come to prevent disease, but usually they're coming to you because they already have an issue. And you know what, fine, if that's what gets you in the door, fine. But I've been seeing a therapist once a week, um for almost 14 months. It is so vital. And there's some days that I come in and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. Like, I'm not even feeling that bad today. Like, I feel fine. And then we just
Right.
start, chit chatting, and something pops up. And then they ask me a question that dives even deeper into what's
Yeah.
going on. And I've even had, talking about peeling off the onion. I remember one of my therapists a long time ago telling me that. And she's like, every time you peel a little bit more, because it was like my second therapist that I had, and somehow my daddy issues came up because my dad wasn't really in my life. And so I was like, oh no, I already worked on that with my other therapist. And she was like, well, but there's always something that maybe you could have forgotten. There's always different ways it can show up in your
Yeah.
life. Sure enough, we had a lot to deal with around my father. And so
Yeah.
that was so interesting to me. And even now, this is like probably my fifth therapist, like in the last 15 years or 14 years of having 2 3 year long therapists.
Right.
we're still talking about some of the issues that I thought I had dealt with. And I know I dealt with them, but there's always something more you can learn. And as you grow older, you just understand things more and you can be more honest with yourself. And in the beginning, I remember my first therapist, I didn't say anything. Like she was like, Stephanie, I don't even know who you are. I've never seen you cry. Like it's been a year and a half and like you tell me what's wrong, but you don't even like listen to me. And I was like, oh, whoa, that was kind of mean. Like I was like, wow, she was so mean to me. But then I was like, no, she was just being honest and she was telling me I've been bullshitting her for the last year and a half.
Right, right. And the thing is that first person may not be, your main go-to. You kind of have to develop a rapport, and the best part about it is, you can be as vulnerable as you want. The key is vulnerability. Brene Brown is, a popular person that talks about vulnerability, but that's really the key. That allows us to open up as humans, and that's how we know that, hey, we're actually going to be, like really connected and really, together and actually have that common thread. So if you're on the fence, definitely go find someone, get a referral, and start that journey. And, if therapy is not your thing, then go find a coach, go find a health coach, a life coach, things like that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And thank you for also allowing me to be vulnerable and speak some of my truth and you as well, because I think having these conversations, these vulnerable conversations, it does promote almost like an openness to other people to understand that they can talk about it too, that it doesn't have to be this taboo thing, working through whatever it is that you're going through mentally. Again, whether it's you're bipolar, maybe you're depressed or anxious, or
yeah,
it's talking about it, because then people can understand you. Like, could you imagine if, like, I know I look happy go lucky, but then maybe someone triggers me and I come from all of a sudden
yeah,
I react from a different place, or maybe I get scared, or I have this weird reaction. If someone understands what I've been through, they're probably going to be a little bit more compassionate of, oh wow, I understand why she reacted in that way. And I mean, if I'm being mean to people, like, that's not okay either, but just like
yeah.
being able to understand, what, this person has been through a lot, or they went through this. I probably shouldn't have said this, like, this joke I thought was funny about, whatever. So
Yeah.
I think it's opening up. Being vulnerable is really beautiful. It's really hard. And I
Yeah.
will say it gets easier as you share
It's
more.
it's practice, like everything in life, it's practice. So, I think the two key things is, one is that if you're not used to it, or if you haven't started doing that in the beginning, I would say sit down with someone that you're comfortable with, right? And
Yeah.
start to, listen. I think we do a lot of talking over each other and not actually listening to what that person is actually saying. So I would invite you to do like a quick, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. Like if you have like a good hour with someone, right? A good best friend or, family member, you can do this virtually, have like a timer where you could speak uninterrupted for like 2, 3 minutes, and I'm
Mm.
like thinking about the upcoming debate and the first presidential debate. And I promise I'm not making this political, but you know how everyone is so turned off, when, no one could hear, right? People are talking over each other. And in a lot of ways, in our everyday conversations, it can be like that, especially relationship couples. So I think a good exercise would be, if you guys need to talk about something, just talk about anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Have a timer, 2, 3 minutes, uninterrupted, allow that other person to speak, and then just kind of go back and forth. So, and I think
Yes.
that would open up a lot of doors, not just with yourself, but with the relationship, with the other person, right? So even if it's platonic, it doesn't have to be romantic, but, any relationship, so.
Colin, that's gold. You're right. We do often speak over one another, and I don't know. I used to do this. I don't do it quite as often anymore. Sometimes I think it's a nervous thing, but a lot of times we're not even listening to the other person. We're
Yeah,
waiting for what we're going to say back, and
right.
so you're right. Just allowing, what a great technique, being able to say, here, I got 3 minutes to talk. I'm going to do my thing. You got 3 minutes. go. And I think
Yeah.
that's so, so valuable.
Yeah. A lot of times we talk over, and what we want to do, and this is the ego coming into play, is that we want them to validate what we already are thinking, you know what I'm saying, and what we already want to hear. And
Totally.
so if you allow space, to give yourself space for change and openness, and allowing that person, possibly doing something different, with, what you have said, then it's more of a discussion. It's more of a conversation, and it's more of a two-way street, So, yeah, so I would say, even if you're not going for a therapist, just have a conversation with someone, just talk, open yourself up, have support systems.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I want to really quickly tell you that someone just plant-based with Bree just said she's cooking dinner and is really loving this conversation. So just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I appreciate everyone's comments. Yeah, I see that here. We are wanting to do what time? Oh, it's almost an hour. And we do want to do something cooking, culinary related down the road. So let's definitely set that up. So again, for those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Colin Zhu. If you guys are tuning in towards the end of this, and I'm the Chef Doc, and I have my own podcast. Me and Steph were really good friends, and we talked about mental health today, and I think we did a really good job. We shed a lot of light about different things, and I really appreciate you spending the time out, and it was good to see you.
you too, Colin. Honestly, like I said, like social media is such a powerful tool, and how cool that you are one of my friends. And I consider you a good friend. You're a true friend. You're a genuine friend. Although we might not talk all the time, I know if
Yeah,
I needed you, I could call you, I could
yeah,
text you, or get a hold of you. And I know you would be there because you understand what it's like to be a human, be in this world.
yeah,
And and I
definitely.
think it speaks volumes of all the different certifications and what the professionalism that you hold. Like you're not just a doctor, you're a health coach. You coach people and you help them because you didn't, I'm not saying doctors are bad, but I know that sometimes they don't have, like you said, there's a difference because they don't always understand how to communicate certain things, especially when it comes to health
Yeah,
or life. And so
yeah.
you encompass both of those. So I also thank you so much for taking the time and the
Hmm.
finances to put yourself through all that, because I know it's time, it's
Oh,
effort,
I mean,
it's
I know you're going through your own schooling and training right now too. You're always trying to up your game, and that's very, very admirable, because it's, I think it's within ourselves to have that insatiable thirst for wanting to do better, within ourselves, and wanting to learn more. And for me, I'm not attached to these, degrees and certifications. Those are just different extensions of me. But I feel like I resonate with people because I just live my life as honestly as I can. And, do I make mistakes and fail and trip up and, fall over? Yeah, exactly.
all the
Yeah,
time.
exactly. So it's, I own, those different aspects of being human. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the whole point of being human, is just really, living in this experience, trying to express ourselves, trying to communicate, and hopefully have fun along the way and laugh a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So,
Absolutely. And so, one more time, where can people find you? Where can they find your podcast? I didn't realize you had a book. How can they find out about the book and anything else that you want to tell everyone?
So I think the best way to find me is my handle, the Chef Doc.
Okay.
I don't know if this was recorded or not, but we can always do a replay later on. But my handle is the Chef Doc, and from there, in my link bio, it'll go to everywhere you need to go. Links to my book, my website, podcast, things like that. And yeah, I host a podcast every 2 weeks. We're in season 3. We talk about plant-based living. We talk about emotional resilience, and one of my favorite topics, we talk about thriving. So not just living your day-to-day, routine life like everyone else, but how do we take that to the next level, and how to, get the juice out of life. So
I love it. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking time out to speak with me and my community today. I know that I really am so thankful, and I'm sure so many other people are thankful as well. And yeah, we definitely I know we've been talking about trying to do a cooking segment for a while, so that is
Yeah.
definitely getting into the books. And yeah, and I just I send you so much love, so much support and
Same
gratitude,
here.
and yeah, and
Same
I hope
here.
you have
Same
a
here.
beautiful evening.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Be safe, be well, and definitely, take your life to the next level, and definitely open up. So thank you for being here with us. So,
Absolutely. Bye,
all right.
Colin.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, you too.